Well, this is fantastic. Thank you, Governor. Thank you so much, and congratulations, first of all.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Outstanding. As a career firefighter, and now I'm head of a full-service fire department, I've seen this business from both sides. I started my career with the California Department of Forestry, right up over that ridge in a place called Spanish Flat, and that was in 1969. And if I do my math right, I believe the governor was 2 years old. So I know a little bit about this business and about this country. The 10 largest California wildfires over the last 10 years, and 8 of them have been in the last 5 years. That's an unbelievable statistic. And in 2020 alone, the LNU complex fire burned off Old Mount George up there. That used to be covered with some wildlife up there, but it's gone now. So, you know, it didn't happen in 2022 so far, and I'm thankful for that. And I think we're going to get through it. And I could attribute that success to the key investments of Governor Newsom and, of course, the hard work of our firefighters. Our work is not over. Climate change is real. We will stay vigilant on all fronts, and I want to thank the governor, and I'd like to introduce next Supervisor Alfredo Pedroza.
Thank you, Mayor Sedgley. I also would like to thank Governor Newsom for the historic and strategic investments, Governor, on wildfire management. $2.8 billion has been invested in the state of California. And let's say this, those investments are working. Our forests are more resilient, our communities are safer because of those investments. Our firefighters are able to respond to wildfires quicker and faster. They're able to get to those places that they need to get to because of those investments, because of the resources you see in this very moment right behind us. It's those investments that allowed us to equip the men and women of fire with the resources to respond. And we know this too, that California is a safer state because of those investments. And while we've had more fires this year, which is true, it's different. And the difference is, Governor, it's those investments that you and the state legislature allowed us to invest in our community. And we owe a debt of gratitude to the men and women that wear the uniform, that respond to our communities. The incredible work they've done on the ground and in the air is making a difference. Thank you very much. Up next, the Director of California Office of Emergency Services, Mark Gallarducci.
All right, well, great to be with you today, and thank you, Supervisor. We were just mentioning, standing there, that in 2017, memory popped up on his social media when we were both here during the North Bay fires, and so it was just a reminder today, you know, the kind of events that we're talking about. I have to say that this past year, really, the tremendous amount of combined proactive efforts that were put forth by state and local and tribal and federal agencies here in California really did result in less damaging, less destructive fire impacts. You know, while some of this obviously is a result of weather, maybe a bit of luck, that sustained investment, the leadership of the governor, making sure that we had resources in place to rapidly detect and respond to wildfires clearly made a difference this year. You know, through the governor's leadership, we've made strategic contributions and investments in technology to detect fires early and put them out, hopefully, where they start or as close to where they start. Capabilities employed this year that were impactful included a new advanced aircraft known as FIRIS, or Fire Integrated Real-Time Intelligence System, which allowed real-time information and situational awareness to be shared with decision makers and incident commanders on the scene, giving us very, very valuable information. The creation of a first of its kind wildfire threat and intelligence information sharing center. If you think about the National Hurricane Center, this is the equivalent for wildfires. Co-managed by Cal OES and Cal Fire, this is really a game changer in being able to share critical information and enhancements of our state's fire and rescue mutual aid system, including new engines in communities across the state for rapid deployment and pre-positioning. This has been a year, and additionally, the governor ensured that we had investments in mitigation efforts and resources for local communities, from home hardening to reduce wildfire impacts. $100 million in community infrastructure grants through Prepare California, and $25 million for community outreach in high vulnerability, high impact communities. This year, we've done that one team, one fight effort. And as we stand here today together, we know work remains to be done, but all of us together, federal, state, local, tribal, and even you, the public, have an important role to play to continue to be prepared. Happy to be with you today and happy to talk about a great fire season. With that, let me introduce Chief Mike Marcucci, the Sonoma Lake Napa Unit Chief.
Thank you, Director Ghilarducci. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Mike Marcucci, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as the Unit Chief of the Sonoma Lake Napa Unit of CAL FIRE and as the Fire Chief of the Napa County Fire Department. The communities in the North Bay have seen their share of disastrous fires over the past 7 years. In fact, over 1.4 million acres have burned during that time, destroying nearly 14,000 structures and claiming the lives of 40 of our community members. Adding to these fires these fires have caused billions of dollars of loss to the local industry and economy. While the number of fires we experience here in the North Bay remains consistent, the acreage burned has been reduced significantly from an average of over 200,000 acres per year over the past 6 years to just over 1,800 acres this year, with the largest being the roughly 600-acre-old fire this past June. I truly believe that this reduction in acreage has direct relation to the commitment that Governor Newsom has shown to building wildfire and forest resiliency within California. These investments have allowed CAL FIRE to add additional helicopters, like the one behind us, to our existing fleet, which has aided firefighters in putting out fires faster than in years past. Additionally, the commitment to and funding of fuel modification and fuel reduction work has been instrumental, particularly here in Napa County. And that investment is already paying off, as we saw in the old fire. A fuel modification project that was completed by CAL FIRE, the Napa County Fire Department, and the Napa Community Firewise Foundation only a few months prior on Soda Canyon Road, near where the old fire burned, was crucial in the successful containment of that fire with no loss of homes or infrastructure, and it enabled the community to get back to normal in a much quicker time. I believe that without this work being done, the outcome would have been much worse. In closing, I would like to again thank Governor Newsom for his commitment to CAL FIRE and to wildfire management. I would also like to thank the Napa County Board of Supervisors for their unyielding support of the work that CAL FIRE and the Napa County Fire Department continues to do here in Napa County. It is truly our privilege to serve as your fire department. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Director and Fire Chief of CAL FIRE, Joe Tyler.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Tyler. I'm the Director and Fire Chief at CAL FIRE. I'd like to thank our elected officials who continue to provide support to CAL FIRE and the California Fire Service to protect the lives, property, and the environment here in California. And to Governor Newsom and your administration, your historic investments are providing a safer environment for our firefighters. You who provided us additional personnel and state-of-the-art equipment like those that are behind us. Our commitment to protecting California starts with fire prevention. In 2022, so far, 151 arrests have been made of arsonists across California, and I'm confident that these arrests have reduced wildfire threats and damage to our local communities and natural resources. And as said earlier, there's been $2.8 billion invested by the legislature and Governor Newsom. It has increased our fuels reduction and forest management abilities since 2019, removing vegetation, brush, allowing us to conduct prescribed fire activities to improve the forest health and resilience. CAL FIRE has completed over 100,000 acres of fuels reduction or vegetation management since 2019 each year. Other state, local, federal, tribal, and private partners have also done fuels management and vegetation management. This work is protecting California communities, and we saw the benefit of some of that this year alone, where these projects moderated fires approaching communities, protected California's giant sequoias, and moved fires away from communities at risk. This year, we also established the Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Division, and it focuses on improving community preparedness, building construction, land use planning, and fire prevention. All of this is to reduce the severity and the damage of wildfires. And this year, that team assisted in setting a new national record with the recognition of the 600th Firewise USA community within the state of California. And as we see successes in fire prevention, we recognize that fires will continue to burn in California in a year-round fire season, or what we refer to as a fire year. And while recent weather helped moderate fires in many areas of the state, we still have fires burning in other areas of the state on a regular basis. And in 2022, CAL FIRE's new S-70I Firehawks, like the one sitting behind you, were flying fires across California. These aircraft provide a quicker response and carry more water than our previous CAL FIRE fleet. In addition, this was the first year that these aircraft, or some of these aircraft, have been able to fly night missions that truly proved to be valuable. In addition to the fleet of CAL FIRE aircraft, investments included 18 private helicopters, like the Sky Crane sitting in the far back, and 6 private fixed-wing firefighting aircraft hired on short-term contracts and strategically located across the state, and they truly made a difference as well. Those contracted aircraft alone flew over 2,700 hours of firefighting mission. But in closing, I want to take a moment and I want to thank our firefighters and support staff, and the firefighters and support staff of our local, state, federal, tribal, and private partners. We can't do it alone. We do it together. And it's for their unwavering dedication and sacrifices that they provide fire prevention, fire protection, and natural resource management across the state. With that, I'd like to welcome Governor Newsom.
Thanks, Chief. By the way, with that, Chief, can we have these guys, can you guys get up here? Stand. Well, we're all feeling lonely here. Why don't you come, if you guys can come back. I want to brag on all of you guys as you come up. This isn't a, politics is behind us. The election's over. This is about gratitude and about appreciation, and the Chief is absolutely right in recognizing your heroism, recognizing all your hard work, also recognizing all the saves, all the work that you did that didn't make the nightly news, all the work that you do every single day that doesn't light up our Twitter and doesn't generate the kind of anxiety and stress so many of us have become accustomed to in this state. It was stated a moment ago that this year we have actually exceeded last year in the total number of fire starts, but we have only experienced about 362,000 acres that have burned. Last year, put that in perspective, 2.569 million acres, about 2.6 million acres with less fires. 362,000 acres this year with more fires. That's because of the extraordinary work the folks you see behind me have done. Not just the physical capital that Joe was highlighting, but the human capital. The men and women at CAL FIRE, the mutual aid system that is as well established here as in any other state in our nation, and yes, our national partners, which we have also well established in terms of a relationship across this country, and tragically, in the context of the magnitude of the challenges around the globe. Now, you'll recall just a number of years ago, we welcomed firefighters from Israel, from Australia. I called the Prime Minister of Canada, thanking Justin Trudeau for sending firefighters down here in California as well. So we've really been tested the last number of years. And here we are near the end of peak fire season, not the end of fire season, as we have all acknowledged. Fire season now is year-round. You don't have to recall, at least in your memory bank, very far back. That was 2019 when we were experiencing the ravages of Mother Nature and the fury that was Paradise and, of course, Woolsey Fire down in Southern California, November fires. I am mindful, having just come back from Southern California, those Santa Ana winds are intense, up to 75-mile-an-hour gusts just over the course of the last few days. We are mindful that we are not out of the woods. So we're not here with any signs mission accomplished in any way, shape, or form. But we are here to highlight the work that has been done this year and the work we have prepared for next year. And I think this is important. We were able this year to provide resources for an additional 1,350 personnel, about $674.1 million budget enhancement, thanks to the California legislature. That allowed us to do our peak staffing early this year in June. Not only do we have more engines, we had more personnel. Currently, we have about 356 engines in this state. On the 21st of this month, we'll be drawing those back and moving from peak to about 243. We'll continue to maintain our vigilance in terms of the distribution of personnel and key equipment, but at the same time, we are now moving our efforts to prepare for next year with earnest. Just in the last 60 or so days, the last 2 months, folks that otherwise would be fighting fires were out there preparing to mitigate fires next year by working actively on forest management projects. Some 20,000 acres of work they have been able to do that otherwise was not scheduled to be done had it not been for the more modest season that we've experienced. We have invested, as was stated, in unprecedented aerial support. Next year, a preview. The C-130s start to arrive. 2023, we will start getting the delivery from the federal government. We were out with Senator Feinstein and Padilla a number of months ago in the Pentagon, securing the delivery dates on the C-130s. They'll be coming in under the CAL FIRE banner next year. 7 new C-130s as part of that. It was highlighted by Joe and others. The Firehawks, these Black Hawks you see behind me, I think we've put to portfolio about 12 of these just in the last few years. Unprecedented investments in our aerial support. You saw that in the Mosquito Fire in particular. Some say they've never seen more aircraft in the air. Now that's a combination not only of available craft and personnel, it's also a combination of Mother Nature's cooperation. Always mindful of that, particularly up here in Napa, where I've spent a disproportionate amount of time in Napa and Sonoma in the last few years as it relates to the fires you've experienced, talking to neighbors, wondering where are the aircraft, making the point that it's windy or that we have these inversions and it's smoky. The conditions are not always right. There's no substitute, again, for the men and women you see behind me. $2.8 billion. The supervisor and mayor, thank you for all of your extraordinary work and, more importantly, your partnership over the last few years. Also, thank you for highlighting that $2.8 billion. That's just a 2-year number. Just in the last 24 months, the state has invested $2.8 billion for active forest management, appropriate fire burns to address the issues of preparedness and mitigation at the same time. We recognize we have not made up for 100 years of neglect in that space. And yes, before you point out the obvious, let me state the obvious. We have a lot more work to do. And that's why we've partnered with the federal government in an unprecedented agreement, a memorandum of understanding, now with the support of an administration that has their hand out, not their fist out, in partnership with the state of California, providing resources to back up that MOU to more than double our active fuels management in this state. The goal is 1 million acres by 2025, and based upon what you just heard the chief say and others, I'm confident we'll get there as a collective. More, again, work needs nonetheless to be done. But that MOU is a 20-year agreement in terms of active forest management and integrating the parallel strategies in the past in a way where we're more strategically identifying vulnerable communities, looking at socioeconomic issues as it relates to ingress and egress, issues that are very familiar to folks here in the North Bay, particularly as it relates to mobile home parks and the like that have been most vulnerable to these catastrophic wildfires. I'm also very proud of the extraordinary support that not only have we received from the legislature in terms of wildfire prevention, but also the work that they just did in terms of addressing Mother Nature's fury, addressing the realities. It's not even interesting to debate them. There are no Democratic thermometers. There are no Republican thermometers. Facts are stubborn. They're simply facts. We've had record-breaking heat domes in 2020. This year, we had 11 days of a flex alert, unprecedented in California history. It's the hottest temperatures recorded on planet Earth, many of them from here in the state of California, in Death Valley, and elsewhere. We're mindful of our obligation to lead, and just yesterday, California put out what we refer to as a scoping plan, which is just a fancy way of saying a binding document laying out in detail a strategy and plan to achieve world-leading effort to decarbonize and move to a low-carbon green growth economy, creating 4 million jobs, reducing air pollution by 71%, greenhouse gases by 85%, and reducing healthcare costs by over $200 billion. This California climate commitment that CARB has advanced in their scoping plan yesterday is backed by $54 billion of investments, unprecedented by any subnational jurisdiction in the world. Shouldn't surprise you now that we're the 4th largest economy in the world, that we need to be playing at that level. We recognize the severity of the moment and the significance and scale of our responsibilities. So both in strategies of prevention, strategies in terms of investments in mitigation, and moreover, resilience on the other side, I couldn't be more proud of this team. And I'll close by highlighting Mark Ghilarducci's extraordinary work. When the cameras go away, when the attention wanes, that's when folks like Mark and his team at the Office of Emergency Services do their most extraordinary and best work. Working with Cal Recycle, working to clean up debris, working to rebuild communities, working to make sure those communities are more resilient, and making sure we don't leave anybody behind. I couldn't be more proud of them in terms of following through on the commitments we've been making, particularly up here in the northern part of the state, but all over the state of California, that we're not going to turn our back, we're not going to turn the page, we're not moving on until the work is done. And no one personifies that better than Mark Ghilarducci. And so I just want to thank Mark for his extraordinary leadership and for holding himself to a higher level of accountability than many of you, in fact, even hold him to. And with that, I just want to again close as I began by acknowledging the work that is done behind the scenes, that's done every single day by the folks you see behind me in uniform. You can't thank them enough. I tell you, there's nothing, in final words, and we'll open to questions. There's nothing, as I drive around this state, I still see those handmade signs. You're almost emotional about it. You know, communities just torn asunder because of these intense events. And you see, you know, these kids out there with crayon or watercolors, and they're just thanking their firefighters. And you see those old cardboard signs still up there. That distills me with tremendous amount of pride. And I hope you guys feel that and understand how appreciative everybody is of your extraordinary work. So again, thank you all for being here, and thank you to all of the good work that's been done by our local fire support and agencies up and down the state to keep so far this fire season under relative control, mindful that we're not out of the season. There is no fire season in California. Happy to take any questions.
Hi, Governor. Noah Abrams, KRCB, Northern California Public Media. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the increase in staffing, about 1,000 firefighters over the summer. What's the potential for a year-round increase in staffing over the winter so mitigation and prescribed burn work from CAL FIRE can continue?
Well, we're continuing to work with not just CAL FIRE in terms of the prescribed burns and the mitigation efforts, but we work with the CCC, we work with our other partners in order to advance that cause. It's a whole of government approach. Remember, Federal government manages about 57% of the forested land in the state. The rest is private. A small percentage is indeed public. So that's just our contribution to those collective efforts. But your question's the right question. So one we constantly ask ourselves. It's a question of resources. And I'm mindful as we have seen Fed policy radically change, as we've seen our quantitative easing change, as we've seen a global economic contraction, the prospects of recession, the constraints on budgets, particularly in California, that has a volatile tax structure, that those resources aren't as consistent and constant as some may like. While we've made record investments, I'm mindful that we have to be strategic in terms of that give and take, and we are well underway with Chief Tyler and others on working through this year's budget with legislative leaders, and our goal is to get back to historic staffing levels. But it's also a goal, it's a long way of answering your question, to also, get some money back in the pocket of the men and women you see behind me. They've deserved a raise. We provided resources this year for that. We're also mindful that we have more work to do to reward the existing staff, not just focus on getting new staff.
Hi, I'm Camille Von Cannell with Politico. I wanted to follow up on that regarding the budget shortfall. How will you deliver on the promises like the MOU and the scoping plan in a time of scarcity? And what is on the chopping block now with the potential shortfall?
Well, we have over $72 billion of resilience, so we're projecting a shortfall that was almost, it wasn't even, I guess from my perspective, not only not surprising, we've been previewing this for 6 months, so nothing about it surprises any of us. Our numbers are modestly different than the LAOs. You'll see them in the next few months. We came out of an unprecedented surplus last year, $101.4 billion surplus. I'll repeat that just because I don't think any governor has ever been able to say it, let alone be able to repeat it. And I'm not sure I'll ever have that opportunity again. $101.4 billion operating surplus last year, which was absurd. And we knew it was absurd on the basis of people capturing capital gains with the prospect of significant Fed policy changes. And we expected a smoothing. So I look at last year's budget and this year's projected deficit in the context of balancing and smoothing. And that's why we invested the way we did last year in one-time investments, disproportionately of $37.2 billion in just the Prop 2 reserves. We have billions more in resiliency and multi-year commitments that we can strategically pull back. And you'll see all that laid out in my budget that I'll present in January. But our priorities are our priorities. Addressing the issues of wildfire and drought, $8.7 billion we're investing in drought mitigation. The investments we're making here are firm, and the investments we'll make on homelessness and addressing affordability and housing are things that I'm committed to. And I'm more than familiar dealing with times of abundance as well as scarcity. As a former mayor, as a governor, that's dealt with deficits and surpluses. We'll continue to balance those priorities and continue to make the appropriate investments. As I've stated all along, those investments are pretty clear in terms of addressing the top issues in the state.
Governor Newsom, hello. Phil Barber from the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. You mentioned trying to get up to those historic staffing levels again. Is there anything are there any tangible goals that you can point to that the state has for increasing funding for mental health services for firefighters generally, but especially our CAL FIRE personnel who have worked under incredibly stressful conditions over the last 6 years?
Including a lot of other men and women in uniform, our deputy sheriffs, our police officers. We provided $55 million last year. That's a specific numeric in terms of the budget that was approved just in that space on wellness. We worked very closely with bargaining unit for CAL FIRE. Their leadership has made this a top priority, and that is specifically part of the memorandum of understanding that we've been advancing and the resources that are part of that larger package that we put forward. Very mindful of the importance of mindfulness and the importance of wellness more broadly defined, reminding these folks that are tough that the mind is part of the body. It's not just about your physical health, it's about your mental health. And I've had the experience of being in a lot of these intense fires, watching our K-9 program at work, watching the peer-to-peer work at at work, and it's all about growing and scaling, and we're providing unprecedented support in this space, and we'll continue to make more progress in this space in the future years.
Hi, Governor. Tom Vakar from Channel 2 News, Bay Area. This is somewhat off track, but actually it's very real in the sense that Nancy Pelosi is no longer going to be the speaker, but she will still continue to be a member of Congress, and you may have to be dealing with another Californian on the other side of the aisle. Your comments about Ms. Pelosi and your comments about a Republican, very likely McCarthy, becoming the speaker and how that might affect the state of California.
All right, pull me into politics with Kevin. But look, I mean, you know well, my relationship with Nancy goes back to my birth. So this is personal, not just political and professional for me. You know, you've also heard me say when I'm, you know, celebrating excellence, you know, I love to quote, you know, Jerry Garcia said, you don't want to be the best of the best, you want to be the only one that does what you do. That describes Nancy Pelosi. She's redefined that position. No one has been more effective, no one has been more consequential in modern American history in that position. And I don't think that's overstated. That's not just a Californian or a fifth-generation San Franciscan saying that. I think across the aisle, some of her most fierce critics are also some of her most they express privately how much they fear and respect her. And I think you can calibrate someone's opposition publicly to someone by the real respect that person has to that individual. And Nancy Pelosi's in a class of her own. Now, your question's a thoughtful and sober one. We have prepared for this. You know, all our positions, we have sell-by dates. She doesn't. There's no term limits. The rest of us, we do. We come and go. We're given a moment in time. She's extended her tenure in remarkable and historic ways, but we didn't anticipate it in perpetuity. And so we've been talking about strategies to future-proof under new circumstances and how we develop a relationship where we don't take for granted that someone is there always having our back. And I've made this point to my staff ad nauseum and to the public. Don't take people like Nancy Pelosi for granted. I talked about saves with these guys. I joke about it all the time. I said, in politics, unlike baseball, you don't get credit for saves. The amount of things Nancy Pelosi's done behind the scenes during the Trump years to stop cuts, draconian impacts, the people of the state of California is, I wouldn't even be able to, you won't have enough tape, even if it's digital, for me to illuminate and highlight just those few years that I had the opportunity to experience the work she did behind the scenes during the Trump years. The work she does is not to be underappreciated. So we are mindful that we're going to have to be more proactive as a state in terms of our efforts in Washington, D.C. Now that she stepped aside from her leadership position. We're mindful as well that power dynamic seems to be pushing itself back further east, and that there is part of the United States west of the Mississippi that's often forgotten in terms of the national discourse. And so we're going to have to step up our game accordingly. Dianne Feinstein was there helping us get these C-130s just a few months ago. Don't ever count her out. I don't care what the pundits are saying. I'm just telling you what I know. She sat there to my right, Padilla to my left, the White House and the Pentagon right in front of us, and she started the meeting, and she was clear on what she expected, and there was respect, and there wasn't a pin drop. No one said a word when she spoke. She still commands a room and should command our respect, and I don't expect her to resign. I expect her to continue to serve as well. So for the next 2 years at least, both those leaders will be with us, and we will take not a day for granted in thanking them for their contribution, their sacrifice to the state and our nation. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Lindsay Holden from the Sacramento Bee. This week, the first partner has been testifying at the Weinstein trial. Can you discuss the impact this has had on your family?
I'm gonna ask you to ask me that question when this trial's over, because I have a lot to share. And I'll just leave it at that with one additional comment. I couldn't be more proud of my wife. You want to talk about grit, you want to talk about courage, you want to talk about, someone I admire. I couldn't be more proud of her, and I saw that firsthand, so I'll leave it at that.
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. Tomorrow, the SACB actually reported that tomorrow you're meeting with city leaders, county leaders on the homelessness issue. I know that you brought up a couple of weeks ago, you kind of halted funding in some of those efforts.
You're going to ruin my time with the mayor and the supervisor.
I'm sorry. What is your message to them? What are you hoping to get out of this? And who exactly could we expect to see in this meeting?
Oh, this is one of many meetings. So we've had consistent meetings with the big 13 mayors, with the League of Cities, League of Counties. We've been very active in developing our relationship over the course of the last number of years. It's materialized in $15.3 billion of support, unprecedented by a factor of 10x in terms of the support we're providing cities and counties to address the crisis of homelessness on the streets and sidewalks of our cities. I'm a former mayor, former county supervisor. I'm deeply appreciative of the hard work and the responsibility of that job and those responsibilities of those jobs. But I'm also mindful that we can't continue down the path we've been on. We've got to do more. We've got to do better. I had 75 homeless plans, first plans that have ever been required from the state of California. I'm proud we initiated that. And sum total of all those plans in the aggregate showed for $15.3 billion we'd reduce homelessness by 2%. It's just not good enough. It's not an indictment of any individual plan. Some plans were extraordinary. Some plans were disappointing. Rather than cast blame, pointing fingers, I decided to take a different approach, and that approach will manifest in a meeting tomorrow with leaders from all up and down the state. One of many meetings, we hope, to advance the cause of addressing the crisis on our streets and sidewalks. It's just about doing more, doing better, and I expect good things to happen from that meeting.
And I just wanted to quickly follow up on the budget. The LAO's projection, and I know the Department of Finance has said their projection's also pretty similar, it doesn't assume that we're in a recession, but your administration, as you said, saw this shortfall coming 6 months ago. Economically, everything is kind of in the recipe to create a recession. I'm just wondering if you are prepared for one, or if those discussions are even happening right now.
Oh yeah, no, they were happening. You can go back to my budget speeches last year. You can go back to the May revise where I said that we're taking the increment of the May revise surplus and 99 cents of the dollar we're investing in one-time purposes, not ongoing. I remember saying that, and even my staff said it can't be 99%. We had to even put up a slide because no one believed it. 99 cents of every dollar. That had never been done, or at least promoted in the past, because of that concern. It's a way of expressing, yes, this has been a concern for some time. It's not my first rodeo. We've all been through this. We've all seen this movie. The volatility, the good days, the bad days. We had a $75 billion surplus 2 years ago, $101.14 this last year. We have a modest projected deficit. It's big numbers, but it's fourth largest economy in the world. And that's why we batten down the hatches. We put a lot of supplemental payments to pay down pension obligations, to supplement our reserves. We could pull those back a little bit and provide some flexibility. As I said, $72+ billion of broad strokes resiliency that we put in the budget. And so we're preparing for a lot of different scenarios, and we're also preparing for this. I don't expect to, back to Tom, your question, which I intentionally skated a little bit, and I appreciate you didn't do a follow-up around Speaker McCarthy. I don't expect a lot of support coming from the Republican caucus. We've passed his prologue. So we're going to have to be creative, and, I'm not saying we're on our own. We're a net donor. Thank you. A lot of those red states out there, you're welcome. But we're very mindful of the headwinds in front of us globally and obviously as it relates to the trend lines in the nation.
Last question, Pete Serratos with NBC. This is a wildfire question. So Were you surprised by how much progress was made with these investments? I mean, look at the number of acres, the drop in acres burned compared to last year. Yeah. I know weather played a factor, obviously, but did you expect this much progress with these investments?
Well, it's interesting. I've had an interesting 4 years for many reasons. We experienced two of the more modest seasons, 2019 and this last season. There was 277,000 acres, I think, burned in 2019. 362 so far this year. Last year, we mentioned about 2.5, 2.6, and then 4.3 million, infamously, that year prior. So we've seen the extremes. So no, I don't expect anything except extremes. Extreme heat, extreme drought, extreme weather, extreme polar. And so the norm has been that sort of whipsaw back and forth, even on the budgets. The smoothing, that was sort of the normalcy. Those days are long gone. And so it doesn't shock me. But I think, and I'll close on this, and thank you all for your patience. I think we're prone to overstate everything we did right in a year like this. But I don't want to understate either the fact that this has been a flywheel, even during that difficult year, 2 years ago, even last year. The investments, the seeds that were planted, those investments that were being made, they're starting to now bear some fruit. And I'll just close on one point that wasn't brought up, and that is the time to delivering these projects. It's critical. Chief was just mentioning one of the projects here that you guys were able to get up just a matter of weeks right before. Which fire was that?
The old fire.
The old fire. And how it literally mitigated substantial acreage and damage, potentially structural damage as well. And they were able to move on that just in a very short period of time. We've been working to smooth that. We have a 3-in-1 new permit under something called Cal VTP, 20-acre programmatic EAR. I want to bore you with it. We've got a lot of things we're waiving under CEQA, and these partnerships are really starting to materialize because the resources are there. But there's also a more resourceful mindset in terms of how we're implementing them. And that's why I just, again, will end as I began with gratitude for all the folks out there that wear a number of different uniforms. Sometimes they're out there holding the line. Sometimes they're out there literally drawing and building new lines up and down the state. And so these guys are Swiss Army knives at the end of the day, doing perhaps a lot more than they anticipated doing when they were in the academy. And it's all part of our new approach, new strategies. And I'm hopeful that we could continue to see this trend. With that, I'm grateful for the trend of patience that you've expressed, and we're thankful all of you took the time to be out here, and thank you for the opportunity to update everybody in the state on where we are this fire season so far. Thank you all very, very much.